Hello friends, this video on Biomolecules Part 2 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Now, before we get into each of these types of biomolecules, let us get clarified with the concept of metabolism. So whenever we talk about a living organism, whenever we talk about the sustenance of a living organism, we often talk about the various chemical reactions or various processes taking place inside that organism. And that is nothing but metabolism. So let us see what is metabolism and how does it happen inside a living organism. So let us see what is metabolism. The set of chemical reactions occurring in a living organism. So just now I gave you an example of the process of digestion, for example, in case of a human being. Now when the process of digestion takes place, there are a lot of chemical reactions which are involved in the course of this process. How? That is because let us suppose we eat some food in the form of say rice or bread. So that is the food which we eat. But by the time the food actually reaches the stomach or the intestine, the food is broken down into smaller and further smaller particles. So how is that process of breaking down taking place? Again, when that reaches the intestine, what happens? There are a lot of enzymes which act on that food and then converts it into simpler and or the more simplest possible form. And at last it is broken down in the form of glucose, which is a simple sugar, and that is how it is stored. But it doesn't mean that we have consumed simple sugar. We had consumed some complex food. So when this process of conversion take place, so basically there are a lot of chemical reactions happening by the action of these enzymes. So these enzymes, there is a lot of making of bonds. There is a lot of breaking of bonds of biomolecules involved. So many proteins get broken down into amino acids. Many amino acids join together to form amines. Many disaccharides get broken down into monosaccharides. So many such reactions take place, and all these reactions together is known as metabolism. And because these biomolecules take part in metabolism, so metabolism is something which is essential for the survival of a living organism. Since biomolecules take part in the process of metabolism, so biomolecules are also known as metabolites. So that is another name for biomolecules. Now all biomolecules have a turnover. When I say turnover, what does it mean? It doesn't mean the business turnover, of course. It means in the process of this metabolism or in the course of these chemical reactions taking place, biomolecules get converted from one form to another. As I just mentioned, many a times the disaccharides will get hydrolyzed to form monosaccharides, that is the simplest sugar. Again, sometimes during digestion, the process of hydrolysis will take place. Sometimes amino acids will combine together to form amines. So they are all biomolecules, but one form is getting converted to some other form. So that is why we say that all biomolecules have a turnover. They get turned over into some other biomolecule, and this keeps happening. Now, it is not always necessary that all these chemical reactions which take place inside a living organism is a single step reaction. Many reactions are multi-step reaction, that is, they occur in multiple steps also. So all these metabolic reactions which we are talking about, they take place inside our body. When I say inside our body, in fact, they take place inside each and every cell present in our body. So this we have discussed before also. So now we will talk about the multi-step reactions which take place during the process of metabolism. So these multi-step reactions are often known as metabolic pathways. So what are metabolic pathways? For example, let us consider the example of cellular respiration, aerobic respiration, which take place where glucose is oxidized to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP molecules. Now, is it a single step process? This is not. A lot of steps are involved. There are a lot of intermediate molecules which are formed. So it is a multi-step process, and this entire process is known as metabolic pathways. So in this metabolic pathway, it can form simple structures from complex structures. It can also form complex structures from simple structures. I mean, in some of the steps, now I'll not get into the steps of the cellular respiration process because it is quite complex. And we will, however, talk about cellular respiration reactions in detail in one of the later chapters. So here you just know that there are many steps involved. In some of the steps, complex substances get broken down into simpler ones, whereas in some of the steps, the simpler compounds group together to form a complex compound. So that on the basis of what is happening, there are two types of metabolic pathways, anabolic and catabolic pathways. So now, as I mentioned, metabolites are converted into each other in a series of linked reactions called metabolic pathways. So metabolites are nothing but your biomolecules. Now these metabolic pathways again are of two types, anabolic pathway and catabolic pathway. So what are anabolic pathway? This is the process of complex structures being formed from simpler ones. That means smaller substances together form a larger substance. So that is anabolic pathway. Catabolic is just the opposite. That is, a bigger structure gets broken down into smaller ones. So that is catabolic, or sometimes it is also known as catabolism. So one of the very good examples of anabolic pathway would be the conversion of acetic acid into cholesterol. So acetic acid is a simpler structure. It is just an acid, CH3COOH. So this acetic acid gives rise to cholesterol, which has comparatively a quite complex structure. So this is an example of anabolic pathway. Whereas the conversion of glucose to form lactic acid, this is an example of a catabolic pathway. That is, a complex structure is broken down into simpler structures. Now this anabolic pathway is also known as biosynthetic pathways because synthesis happens here. Synthesis means formation. So here formation takes place. So that is why it is biosynthetic pathway. Whereas catabolic pathways are known as degradation because here the larger molecule is getting degraded. So it is getting disintegrated or it is getting destructed. So that is why it is called degradation pathway. So this is about the metabolic pathways. When we talk about anabolic pathways, now since they form something, so they need some energy. So they consume energy. Whereas in catabolic pathways, since it breaks down, so it releases a lot of energy. So in order to form anything, you need energy. Let us suppose if you just take a common example from your day-to-day life. If you want to become something, if you want to score well in your exam, that means you want to form something, you want to make something, you may want to make a good result. So what do you need? You need to consume energy. That means you need to take energy, you have to be more energetic and you have to work hard to get it because you want to make something, you want to form something. Whereas if you want to do really bad in your exams, you don't want to score well, what do you need to do? You don't really need to do anything. You can just chill out. You just go to your examination hall, don't write any answers and you will not score anything. So when you want to form something, you need to consume some energy, you need to provide some energy. Whereas when you want to break down something, you don't need energy, instead you will release energy. So whenever something is getting broken down, so some energy will be released. So that is how anabolic pathways are different from catabolic pathways. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.